Welcome to Sewing Out Loud, the official podcast of Zede Sewing Studio. Here are your hosts, Zede and Mallory.
Sewing Out Loud. Hello and welcome to the podcast. I'm Mallory Donahue.
And I'm Zede Donahue.
And Mom, can you repeat what you just said to me about
you're learning to sew?
Yeah.
No, Mallory has on a shirt that she made today, like while she was working the floor at the shop, and we do that. In fact, I like people to do that. And,
that's why I did it, Mom.
And I was sitting here. We recorded another episode just a few minutes ago or whatever, and I was looking and I was like, oh my gosh, the neck is finished and the there's hems in the sleeves.
Everything's hemmed.
Is there a hem?
And there's a hem on the bottom. I know you
hem
have
at the hem at the bottom.
Look, right there. You can't. Yeah.
Mallory is finally learning to sew.
I don't want to hear any lip about me not.
And people think that I'm mean to you.
Yeah, no, we're off microphone, and she's like, "Oh, good, you're finally learning to sew." Like that's what she said to me. I just want you to, and actually, you're wearing a ready-made T-shirt that's made like my shirt. It's got the sleeve incorporated
and
like that. I love
this
it.
Shirt, look, this is funny because somebody gave me a compliment on this, and they said they just assumed I made it. And I can't remember why I bought this shirt, but I was like, it was kind of a fluke, and I was like, I think I'll buy that shirt because I just don't buy that many shirts.
Yeah.
But I did like the way it fit me.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if you'll notice, too, it has a lot of navy blue in it, which I usually don't buy either. So,
yeah, and
this would be my exceptional shirt.
I made that dress for Baby Lock Tech that was blue.
I know.
And I never thought, I'm really not a blue person.
There's a lot of blue in, blue is one of the in colors
right
now, right? So, that happens, and someday we'll do a podcast on the cycles of color and fashion and how color comes in cycles.
We'll just reenact that scene from The Devil Wears Prada where Meryl Streep.
Oh, yeah.
That's what we'll do.
And she's right.
Yep.
I think she's absolutely right on that. She is.
Today we're going to talk about fabric snobbery. And
because we have it.
Because we are.
We know so much about it.
Because we know we're experts in fabric snobbery. But I think this is where maybe you'd expect us to say, oh, we only sew with the finest blah, 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 and that's...
The finest silks.
The finest, yes, and that's not
finest.
That's not what we're actually going to say.
No.
But I think that this episode was spurred by something that someone said in the store like a really long time ago. She came in and she was like, oh, that's rayon?
Yes.
And she touched it, and she looked like she liked it. She wasn't like,
right.
She's like, oh, it's rayon. I can't buy rayon. Like, I hate rayon or something like that. And I was like, but what, all rayon? Like, you hate all rayon? Right. And you were talking to her, and you're like, I love rayon. And she's like,
and
really,
what
you
she
do?
was, I think what
you talked to her.
It was a rayon
knit?
Lycra, like 3% Lycra, which, if anybody's familiar with that, it's a real popular sort of combo right now because you get a silkiness with a little, with the stretch,
right?
And not only the stretch but the memory,
right?
So when it does stretch, it comes back. And I was like, oh, that's like my favorite fabric right now for tops. And actually some dresses and some skirts.
Well, and she said,
right.
Really?
Yeah, she said really. And then
she bought it.
Well, the other thing I think people don't understand is rayon is a natural fiber.
Yes.
And rayon, you will also see it referred to as viscose, Viscose, I believe. And it is a plant product.
Right.
So it's it's a plant product, and
it's wood pulp.
It is. It's wood pulp, and they pulp it up, and then they spew it out in little threads
and then
little
they
fibers
or knit it or whatever.
I guess they spew out the fibers, and then they make that into like yarns,
thread or yarn,
and then
yarn,
they weave the yarns or whatever.
Yes.
So now, and the other thing that's funny about viscose or rayon that you brought up is the way it feels when it is wet.
Yes.
And we used to always get instructions that it had to be dry cleaned.
Mm-hmm.
We don't always get those instructions anymore. Sometimes we do. I never dry clean it. I always launder it with water, usually in the washing machine. A lot of times maybe in a knit lingerie bag because I don't want other fabric, you know, anything that's fine.
Yeah, and I wash all my rayon,
Right.
like my challis and stuff,
Right.
those tops,
So-
and hang them up.
Anyway, rayon? What did they
Call
call it?
They call
Because
it.
I was not familiar with that term.
Yeah, well, it feels like sand when it's wet, and then
Right. It's a mock type silk.
So
almost.
what I've heard it called is a cold hand.
Yes.
Rayon has a cold hand
because it's hard and brittle, which actually silk
is
can be
silk,
like
yeah.
that too. It's
Uh-huh.
very hard. Now, I don't know if rayon is like silk in this, but when silk is wet, it is not strong.
right.
When it is dry, it becomes stronger. You know, parachutes used to be made out of silk. Now I believe they're made out of some sort of nylon.
Yeah, I don't know.
But oh no, in the like big world wars and everything, people would like, you know, they wanted those parachutes. They were making clothing because they
Right.
couldn't get fabric any other way. So I like rayon with a little bit of lycra or spandex in it, right?
Yes, and I think though sometimes you can feel something that says it's rayon and maybe you don't like it,
Right.
and I really
And
think
that's quality.
yeah, and I think that I had a customer who was going to Thailand, and
Right.
she was like, "I want to buy silk there." She's like, "But how do I know if it's real silk? The only way I've found that you can really know is to burn it."
Right.
And I was like, "Well, yeah." And then she's like, "Cause
Or smell it. Sometimes you can smell
she
it.
said, I don't want to be cheated." And I was like, "Well, okay, I can get that. Like, I would buy a fabric
Right.
whether or not it was silk, as
I was
long
going
as
to
I
say,
liked
as
the way
long as I liked it.
But
I
I
wouldn't worry
wouldn't-
about getting cheated because if I liked it, I liked it.
But I
Right.
don't know if I'd want to pay $50 a yard for
Right.
something that, you know,
Like maybe you did when you were in Paris for wedding
right.
fabric.
But no,
Yeah.
you certainly don't want to overpay. But
Right. nobody wants to be taken advantage
But
of.
as long as it feels good, I mean, I felt things before, and I've been like, "Oh my gosh, I think this is rayon or something." And then it says 100% polyester, and I was like, "Well,
Right.
like the way
Well,
it feels, put it on my
and,
body."
And here's the deal. Silk breaks down.
Uh-huh.
And silk breaks down in light especially.
Right.
Okay. And polyester doesn't. So
Well-
and neither one of them breathes. So
And-
they're both hot
And
when you wear them. So
I think that if somebody's having a hard time visualizing how, like different fabrics can feel so different,
right.
think about wool. Okay.
Right.
Okay, so you know that you've touched a wool garment before or worn something wool and it's been super duper scratchy, but then you've also felt wool things that are
That are
super
very soft,
smooth and
right.
wonderful, and
Well,
you
and with
know.
wools, you've got so many different types also.
Exactly.
Well, and one thing about quality is, or feel, or whatever, or how the reason a silk can feel different than another silk, or a silk, a polyester can feel more like a silk, or whatever, is how they are woven,
Right.
on what loom they're on, and the quality of those fibers, and how they were made, and how they were spun together.
Right.
So it's the process is as important as the original
Yep.
material. So both of those things, you could take great silk fibers and screw them up.
Yeah, I felt silk before
Right.
that I was like, I don't really would want to wear this.
Right.
You know, I like
Well,
I,
and silk, that there's dupioni, and there's fine silk,
Yep.
and there's
Silk chiffon.
silk chiffon, and there's
silk satin.
what's the lubby silk called? That has
Slub?
the big slubs in
That's
it.
dupioni, isn't it?
No, but I mean like
Big.
the real coarse thing, like you make a tweed jacket out of. I guess it's like a silk tweed.
Yeah, like a
Right.
Well,
But you'll see it,
yeah.
and there is a name for one, and there was a silk that was real popular, and it was actually, I think, like in the 40s almost, and it was called like peasant grade silk,
like
and-
really rough,
and it was
roughly
it was
woven
almost like
or something.
burlap.
Uh-huh.
but it was soft. It looked like burlap. It was thick like that, but it had a nice softness to it, and it dyed really well.
Right. So
So-
I think that if somebody's going to be, a fabric snob and say,
Right.
I only want this or want
Right.
that, and you need to know how fabric behaves for when you're going
That's
to,
right.
work with it. But I think that's how we are fabric snobs, not necessarily just based on fiber content.
Right.
Like if I'm not a big fan of poly cottons for certain projects, but I will just buy 100% polyester knit if I
Sure.
like the way it feels.
Sure.
And it's affordable. Or
Right.
I will just drop the cash on some $30 a yard wool coating, as well. But not all wools are the same either.
No.
I think that
Now, the one fabric that I tend to stay away from, unless I'm making a Halloween costume, is acetate.
Oh, there you go.
Okay? It's crinkly. It's rough. It will crimp and get, a wrinkle in it that doesn't come out easily. It's hard to iron, but honestly, that will be a lot of things you see at Halloween time is acetate.
Right.
So acetate is basically like plastic. So
yeah, it's plastic.
So it's plastic fibers made into fabric, and maybe but occasionally there'll be something that, well, especially like I said, like a costume or something, you might get the right color or the right texture. Something might be the right or reflectiveness that you want out of something that acetate's appropriate for it. The only thing is I'm telling you, when people say things are hard to sew, like, oh, silk is hard to sew.
Right.
No, acetate is. The other thing about acetate is you punch that hole in it and it's there.
End of game.
Right. Yeah. When you're pulling out the dart that you made in the wrong place, you'll always see the outline.
Okay, so this is what I wanted to bring this up, and you came right around to it, is people have some misconceptions, too, about my first project should be on cheap fabric.
Yeah, big mistake.
And sometimes that can
sure
work. Right. But working with some 100% wool woven fabrics, I mean, that stuff sews like butter. It is
the same way with silk.
You can manipulate it. You can press it. If you do make a mistake, it is sturdy enough to handle tearing out those stitches.
That's right.
I will have, I swear we've said this in a podcast before, but I've had some people bring in things to sew with, and they're like, oh, I found this fabric at a garage sale, and I'm going to use it for my test garment. And I thought, it doesn't matter what you make out of that. You're not going to like it.
Well, and it's not going to have the right hand. It's not going to feel right.
It can make you think that you don't, like that your pattern isn't fitting correctly.
Honestly, the people that sew the best with cheap, crappy fabric are the more accomplished sewers. Right, because it will have problems and it will be harder to sew with and whatever. It's just like people having the misconception of a knit is harder to sew with.
I agree.
It is not.
Not necessarily.
Maybe one knit is a little bit more difficult than the other knit. I mean, you'll find that all the time.
Well, shoot, and knits is such a... I mean, we're talking about, I'm wearing like a sweater knit right now, and then there's Lycra that is the dance costumes.
Well, and when you're saying knit or woven, I mean, how many categories of fabric are there? There's knit, there's woven, and there's bonded.
And then like hides.
Hides, right, which really isn't fabric anyway. But it's something with, so that's it. That's all those are your big categories.
Right.
Polyester knit, if you say that, a lot of people my age are going to, go back to the 70s and go, I'm not wearing that stuff. Talk about something that didn't burn. It just melted.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it just like curled up and melted like an old witch or something, I mean, and felt awful, and it would like hold odors. I mean, there was just like nothing good about it.
Right.
And if you want to make something really ugly, find some of that fabric.
It's that like polyester, like uniform knit. Well, and I think that there's this resurgence of the Ponte.
And like it stood up by itself.
There's this resurgence of the Ponte knit nowadays. And I think, now
people are scared of Ponte.
People can be scared of it, but now they make it like it's all rayon, or it's, poly and some rayon, or it's poly, but it feels nicer than it used to.
And just so y'all know, Ponte is big right now.
Yeah.
Big in fashion. It's good for leggings, it's good for shirtings. I mean,
it's a nice stable knit.
It's a good stable knit. It's got some beef to it.
So that's where, sometimes in a t-shirt class, I'll say, hey, we're going to use something like a more stable knit, for this. And I think I really would be careful trying to use some fabric that's been laying in somebody's basement for 20 years to make your first t-shirt. Well, you're not going to like it.
You also don't know if it's degraded. And people
or maybe you do know it's degraded because you can touch it and feel it.
And it's very true. Some things do, natural fibers degrade, and it happens. It just depends on how they've been kept, even how they started out, whatever. Or they could have been in UV light for 10 years and then stuck away for 20, and something else happened to them. I forgot what I was going to say because you made a point, and I thought, oh, I want to make a point about that.
Well, I just want to say that when you are choosing fabrics, let your feeling for garments in
Right.
particular, be your guide, or, ask someone. Hopefully you're at maybe a store where somebody can help you, or to ask other people online.
And if there's a fabric you don't like you just don't like you don't like what? Terry knits, or
Yeah.
you don't, fleece. I have an issue with fleeces. Okay. I do not like fleeces. I think they're hot. I talk about a fabric thing could be really, really cheap,
Yeah.
And fleece is a fabric, it is a plastic.
Yeah.
Most fleeces are,
Polyester fleece is a plastic. Yes.
well, there's acetate fleece too.
Well, and
yeah.
acetate. I'm saying
Yeah.
obviously wool fleece is wool.
Right. Right.
Okay.
So, cheap fleece is just, you make something out of it, you launder it once, and it becomes worthless. I feel like, it balls up or whatever it does, doesn't hold the dye properly. Now there are grades of fabric. I guess one of the things I was going to say is fabric, or if you're learning to sew, yes, you should have decent fabric, and you should have decent thread, and you should have a decent needle, and you should have a decent machine. That doesn't mean it's the most expensive.
Right.
I'm just saying that you should start out with something that can be a reasonable product, because so many of those things can disappoint you.
Yeah, they can really affect
So
your...
and it's just like, I've had people come in, I think, especially with machines all the time, it's like, well, every machine I ever did, the thread balled up underneath. The only one that ever worked for me was my mother's, 1922 Singer. And I want to say, I know exactly why then you had that problem.
Right.
I mean, I know why, because her tension disc is on the outside. She can see that her thread is going in the tension, whether the presser foot is up or down. That's why it worked for her.
Right.
It wasn't because it was the 1922 Singer, and other machines don't work for her because of her specific personality or DNA. That's not the reason that they don't work.
Right.
And the same thing with fabric. So if I make a pair of fleece shorts, I'm not going to be happy.
Right.
But if I make a fleece jacket, I probably will be happy.
And I think we had somebody write in and they said, I'm trying to sew all these PDF patterns for my kids, and they tell me to use quilter's cotton, and I'm not happy. And
Right.
I'm like, yeah, that can make a huge difference.
Right.
And that's part of the challenge of teaching the garment sewing classes at our store. We try to get in
Absolutely.
the fabrics that are applicable for our class, but getting the nice fabric, it doesn't just mean, oh, you're going to have a really expensive garment or it looks better than something else. But what it means is you could be successful. It will hang on your body right. You can't make everything, every garment out of quilter's cotton,
Right.
So
Right.
I think that just don't limit yourself.
Right.
Give yourself a chance at maybe fabrics that if you've gotten into sewing and you hear people, really shunning polyester or shunning whatever, rayon or
fleece.
Mom shuns fleece, you can give it a try, but just think about the characteristics of the fabric,
The other thing I want to address here, and this has got a few points about it, is when you take a class at a shop, at a store, and they say you have to use our fabric, and they may even be as specific as saying you have to use the fabric from this collection,
Right.
or something like that. Okay, there's more than one reason for that. We don't sell a lot of fabric, and the fabric that generally, we don't call ourselves a fabric store, I guess
Right.
is what I should say. We actually do sell a lot of fabric.
Yeah.
But, you can't walk into our store and see all types of fabric. We're very specific because we cater to a specific clientele and a specific niche. So our fabric is usually bought for our classes or for a pattern we have developed or something like that. Or maybe it's a really good deal we found that we can pass on to you. So the reason your store is saying you have to buy the fabric from here may be because they want it to be a specific quality.
Right.
Or have certain characteristics. Now, the other reason that store may say this is because that's how they make their money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they're a fabric store and they give classes. Why do you think they give classes? They give classes so you'll buy their fabric.
Right.
So that people will learn to buy fabric so that they can stay in business. And that's not bad.
Yeah.
Okay? There's nothing wrong with those people if they're, believe me, if they're offering you a class and it only costs $25, $50 or whatever, and they have to pay a teacher and they have to pay, to maintain that shop, they're not making any money on the class.
Right.
Okay? They're giving you that class almost free. So that's the reason. And a lot of times we will kit a class because we want the customer to be successful. If we don't kit the class and they come in with the garage store fabric or garage sale fabric, and then it doesn't work for them, it's kind of hard sometimes to even convince them, well, your fabric was kind of crappy for this.
Yeah, it's hard.
We tried to explain to you cotton. Well, this wasn't exactly the cotton we were talking about, or this isn't really the quality of knit we were talking about.
Well, and with the, with the jeans, I was like, I know that this denim works.
Right.
And, a few people have come in since then and said, oh, I found some of this like at Joann's or found some of that. And I was like, well, it might work,
Right.
But
and if people do that,
I'll say, do you know the percentage of the lycra? And they're like, oh, no. And I was like, well, that's kind of important on this.
And usually that's on the end of the bolt.
Right. But, you need to pay attention to stuff like that sometimes.
And now with phones, you can take a picture of the end of the bolt.
Right.
And, bring it in and ask somebody, do you think this is going to work for me? Or get a sample of the fabric. So, we're fabric snobs because we want it to work.
We want it to work.
We want it to be successful.
It's not arbitrary.
And I really believe with garment sewing, and okay, quilters, you hit me hard on this and give me some comments, because with quilting, we know quilting cottons work.
Right.
And quilting cotton's a good quality quilting cotton, and not one from a big awful box store that's the cheapest thing they have, okay? I'm talking about a good quality quilting cotton. It's going to work on any quilt. On garments, it's a different story.
It is.
Okay? How you want it to hang, how you want it to feel, what kind of seams are there, how was it meant to look, is the seam set in, is it a raglan sleeve? All these things it's a big difference. So I think garment sewing and picking the fabric is honestly more difficult than quilting. I think with quilting, you're picking color.
Yeah.
And effect. I mean, it's the artistic view. Where with garment, yes, the artistic view too is very important, but also the hand of it, the feel of it, the content, how you're going to launder it, all of that is important too.
Well, let us know if you've ever had a bad experience making a pattern out of fabric that was not recommended, or
like you made something and it fell apart while you were wearing it.
or if you've ever made anything out of acetate, we'd love to know what it looked like. And you can get to us online at our website, sewingoutloud.com. You can email me, Mallory, at sewhere.com, and we are Zede Sewing Studio on Instagram.
So long and so great. Thanks for listening to Sewing Out Loud. For even more expert sewing advice, visit sewhere.com.